Thank you so very much, Franziska. Resilient sustainability planning, or was it sustainable resilience planning? Well, I'm not a member of the Church of Sustainability and Resilience, so I hope you do not expect me to talk too much about ecological issues. I'm interested in random planning values, and I want to welcome everybody to this meeting. I'm delighted to be back in Cambridge, virtually at least. I will promise you one thing. After you've heard talks and podcasts about COVID-19 for more than a year, I will not speak about COVID-19 today. L'allegoria ed effetti del buono e del cattivo governo. The allegory of good and bad government is a series of 3 fresco panels painted by Ambrogio Lorenzetti between February 1338 and May 1339. The paintings are located in Siena's Palazzo Pubblico and were supposed to inspire the members of the city council. In the 14th century, planning values were communicated in simple terms: hope, generosity, self-restraint, justice. Also, the allegory of bad government was clear and simple and couldn't possibly be misunderstood. So let me ask again, resilient sustainability planning, or was it sustainable resilience planning? Actually, it's even more complicated. What about planning for resilience or planning for sustainability? Please note the difference. Sustainable planning is a type of planning that does not hamper the chances of future planners. Planning for sustainability is a type of planning that allows the present use of natural resources without compromising the same use intensity for future generations. In the literature, you find many, many times people writing about sustainable planning when they mean planning for sustainability. But maybe subconsciously, they are also thinking about their jobs. Planning values and buzzword bingo. In 1994, this wonderful cartoon Dilbert had one about the buzzword bingo. And Wally is talking with Dilbert. Here's your buzzword bingo card for the meeting. If the boss uses a buzzword on your card, you check it off. The objective is to fill a row. And the point here, boss, you're all very attentive today. My proactive leadership must be working. Bingo, sir. If American planning, and I'm quoting James Connolly, if American planning orthodoxy of the 1960s could be described as the radiant garden city beautiful, then today's orthodoxy might be the smart, sustainable, resilient city. What Jim probably meant as a joke is actually typical of urban policy language. So let me demonstrate to you buzzword bingo and the new urban agenda. From 2016, paragraph 5. The new urban agenda will help to promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, achieve gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls in order to fully harness their vital contribution to sustainable development. The new urban agenda will foster resilience. Paragraph 9. The implementation of the new urban agenda contributes to making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Paragraph 11. We ensure that all inhabitants of present and future generations are able to inhabit and produce just, safe, healthy, accessible, affordable, resilient, and sustainable cities and human settlements for all. Paragraph 51. We commit ourselves to urban planning and design instruments that support efficiency, urban resilience, and environmental sustainability. Bingo. The new urban agenda has been negotiated by countries with wildly different interests. And sometimes buzzword bingo helps bridge political differences. But what if we want to reclaim a language that means what it says? To avoid buzzword bingo, it is important to know the meaning of words. For example, resilience. To foster resilience, the paragraph 5 of the new urban agenda, can mean many different things, some of which aren't so good. Planning fosters resilient water management. Planning fosters resilient public transport. Planning fosters resilient crime. Planning fosters resilient bacteria. So what does foster resilience really mean? The meaning of words very much depends on context. And buzzword bingo is the death of context. This was very strongly expressed by Tracy Washington, an NGO activist. She was from Louisiana Justice Institute, and after Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, she really expressed a very strong opinion about resilience. Stop calling me resilient, because every time you say, oh, they're resilient, that means you can do something else to me. I am not resilient. In her article, Don't Call Me Resilient Again, Maria Kaiker thinks about what the problem with this inflationary use of resilient really is. And I quote, if we took Tracy Washington's objection seriously, we would stop focusing on how to make citizens more resilient, as this would only mean that they can take more suffering in the future. If we took this statement seriously, we would need to focus instead on identifying the actors and processes that produce the need to build resilience in the first place. And we would try to change these factors instead. Unquote. The smart, resilient, sustainable city has got a bad reputation. And this means planning and the return of traditional values. So justice is one of these traditional values. And on one of the posters I designed for the Dortmund Faculty Lounge, I put probably the most important quote from John Rawls. Justice is the first virtue of social institutions, as truth is of systems of thought. Laws and institutions, no matter how efficient and well arranged, must be reformed or abolished if they are unjust. Unfortunately, also profs make mistakes, and I was mistaken about when the theory of justice was published. It was published in 1971. And all of these posters are still available on the website of my former chair. Justice as planning value. That's more like the Siena painting. And recently, political stakeholders have returned to traditional values. A prominent case is the use of justice as the lodestar of spatial development. And many books and articles have been published on spatial justice or the just city. This is just a selection of this literature. The just city is a spatial policy that was adopted by the new Leipzig Charter in 2020, December 2020. The new Leipzig Charter. So what could that mean, the just city? Many concepts of justice exist. So there is libertarian justice, which promotes free and successful individuals. Justice is what's good for the strong. Representatives are, for example, Adam Smith in the 5th book of his The Wealth of Nations, or of course Friedrich August von Hayek. Utilitarian justice promotes the greatest happiness for the greatest number. Justice is what's good for the most. Prominent representatives of utilitarian justice are Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, but actually the whole of welfare economics is rather utilitarian. Social justice promotes the least advantaged members of society. Justice is what's good for the poor. And John Rawls, who I already mentioned, is a very prominent representative of social justice. Many a concept of justice offers good reasons to follow it. With monorational concepts of justice, the followers have to choose. For example, if you follow my groups, the followers have to choose between the strong, the most, or the poor. If they want libertarian justice, they choose the strong. If they want justice for the most, they will become followers of utilitarian justice. And if they're interested in social justice, they choose to make policies for the poor. What is the problem with monorational justice? Whatever concept of justice planners choose, the followers of other concepts of justice will think that their plans are unjust. This quagmire I call essential injustice. How do policymakers react to essential injustice? So how does the new Leipzig Charter and its Leitbild of a just city deal with essential injustice? The answer is, of course, the definition of what is a just city. And this is the definition of the new Leipzig Charter. The transformative power of cities provides equal opportunities and environmental justice for all, regardless of gender, socioeconomic status, age, and origin, leaving no one behind. A just city provides opportunities for everyone to integrate in society. All social groups, blah, blah, blah. All citizens, blah, blah, blah. The new Leipzig Charter, and I really appreciate that the new Leipzig Charter tries to think about spatial justice and the just city, but the new Leipzig Charter is ensnared in the justice for all trap. What is that trap? The basic idea of whatever concept of justice is to help distribute goods and bads and to make choices on the distribution of goods and bads. If planners and other policymakers dodge the choice between the strong, the most, or the poor, they don't promote the just city. The justice for all trap often results in frustrating and ineffective plans. And these plans give justice a bad name. How do planners react to essential injustice? So the first reaction we have just discussed, promise justice for all, the justice for all trap. Another frequent reaction, avoid discussions about justice. If you look at the Leipzig Charter from 2007, you will see the word just is mentioned only once as adjust. In a totally different context, has nothing to do with justice. A third reaction, the managerial approach. Follow the politicians. But I would like to ask, how should planners react to essential injustice? When I thought about essential injustice in the 1990s, I was quite inspired by a letter from a Birmingham jail by Martin Luther King Jr. And I quote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." Unquote. So how should planners react to essential injustice? The injustice anywhere view would say, don't look for an ideal concept of justice, but recognize everyday injustice. And the next recommendation would be, planners, avoid injustice and take inspiration from Judith N. Sklar's wonderful book, Faces of Injustice. And Sklar really made very clear that it's impossible to avoid injustice. And avoiding injustice means that you have to address the issue. And the third suggestion is accept polyrationality. And this is the planet without a condom approach. That is an approach that I have developed in an article in Planning Theory. It's based on Georg Simmel's article on der Großstadtmensch und das Geistesleben. And in this article, Simmel suggests that people can only deal with the metropolis if they defend themselves with a condom against being raped by the many impressions and challenges the metropolis puts upon them. So people in a metropolis are constantly challenged, and they cannot deal with all these challenges. So they have to put on a condom. And that, I think, is a very good advice for everyday life, but it's a bad advice for planning, because planners have to face polyrationality. They have to accept it. Actually, they have to look for it in order to be able to design and suggest just plans. Another poster with a quote by Judith N. Sklar. Every social change, every new law, every forced alteration of public rules is unjust to someone. The best way to bridge the gap between settled expectations and demands for public change may be a system of effective and continuous citizen participation in which no one wins or loses all the time. No one wins or loses all the time. That is Sklar's suggestion to deal with injustice. Planning values need to be rejectable. Kevin Morgan is probably my favorite in the category of planners who cannot be contradicted. in an editorial, Feeding the City, the Challenge of Urban Food Planning, Kevin wrote, feeding the city in a sustainable fashion, that is to say, in a way that is economically efficient, socially just, and ecologically sound, is one of the quintessential challenges of the 21st century, and it will not be met without a greater political commitment to urban food planning and a bolder vision for the city. Wow, wow, I thought when I read that for the first time. But then I went on thinking, and I'm not so much in favor of that quote any longer. Two reasons. The Morgan quote is very persuasive and inspiring, but it's merely rhetorical. Why? Because nobody could contradict. It's faith, not science. Or have you ever heard someone saying, feeding the city in an unsustainable fashion, that is to say, in a way that is economically wasteful, socially unjust, and ecologically harmful, that is one of the quintessential challenges of the 21st century, and it will not be met without inferior political commitment to urban food planning and a more timid vision for the city. No, we have not heard someone saying this. But isn't this the reality of food production and food distribution in many cities? Feeding the city in reality very often is done in an unsustainable fashion. And it's done wasteful and unjust and ecologically harmful. So one of my problems with planners who cannot be contradicted is that they confirm and reaffirm the tensions between faith and reality without offering solutions how to deal with reality. Moreover, the faith expressed in the Morgan quote applies to virtually all fields of planning. Managing transport in a sustainable fashion, that is to say, in a way that is economically efficient, socially just, and ecologically sound, is one of the quintessential challenges of the 21st century, and it will not be met without a greater political commitment to urban transport planning and a bolder vision for the city. It's easy to imagine such a sentence in an article about transport planning. Or housing the homeless in a sustainable fashion, that is to say, in a way that is economically efficient, socially just, and ecologically sound, is one of the quintessential challenges of the 21st century, and it will not be met without a greater political commitment to urban affordable housing planning and a bolder vision for the city. I will not continue to haunt you with variations of Kevin's quote, but the next time you write such a sentence, please remember how painful it is to write something that cannot be contradicted. The Morgan quote nicely illustrates that planning is constantly searching for a greater political commitment to and a bolder vision for the city, like a constant pursuit of happiness. So let's think a moment about planning values and the pursuit of happiness. There's this great picture by Rudolf Henneberg, Die Jagd nach dem Glück, The Pursuit of Happiness. He painted it between 1863 and 1868. It's a very large picture. It's hung in the Museumsinsel, Nationalmuseum in Berlin, in an impossible place, but it is such a large picture, so they didn't find a spot where to display that picture more favorably. A rider on a horse, galloping, pursuing the goddess of fortune, And the goddess of fortune is balancing on a sphere over an abyss. And in a moment, the rider and the stallion will plummet into the abyss. And the victim of this gentleman, the maiden, lies on the roadside, and death follows. So that's an allegory for food planning. You have the food planner who gallops on the horse of regulatory food planning. There's the illusion of the plan and the pursuit of the sustainable food system. And lawyers are following and try to kill the food planner. And the meat eaters, of course, are the victims. Or transport planner. The rider is a transport planner galloping on the mare of sustainable mobility. And the illusion are electric scooters, and the unreachable goddess is resilient transport sharing. And death are car enthusiasts. And the victims, of course, are pedestrians. The affordable housing planner gallops on this stallion of social justice, and the illusion is market solutions. And the game, the goal, of course, is the end of homelessness, but the victim is efficiency, and the landowners are not happy. Are planning values and planning goals random? Can planners assign buzzwords and hope that nobody notices? To avoid buzzword bingo, it is important to use language carefully. It is also important to apply logic. So let's think about planning values and the importance of logic. And this is now the interactive part Franziska has announced before. There are 4 cards, E4, K7. Suppose each card has a number on one side and a letter on the other. And someone tells you, if a card has a vowel on one side, then it has an even number on the other side. Which of the cards do you need to turn over in order to decide whether the person is lying? These are the possible answers, not the right ones, the possible answers in the 4-card experiment. Only E, only K, only 4, only 7, E and K, E and 4, E and 7, K and 4, K and 7, 4 and 7, E, K and 4, E, K and 7, E, 4 and 7, K, 4 and 7. Each card. No card. You now have 2 minutes to answer the question. Suppose each card has a number on one side and a letter on the other, and someone tells you if a card has a vowel on one side, then it has an even number on the other side. Which of the cards do you have to turn over in order to decide whether the person is lying? The 2 minutes start now. 1 more minute. So I see that some are writing in the chat. And that chat is a bit slow, so I will wait a little bit more. I thank you very, very much. I did that for a card experiment in classroom over the past 22 years. And the typical score looks like that. And that is what you can also see in the chat. Funny thing is, there's one correct solution of the 4-card experiment. Suppose each card has a number on one side and a letter on the other, and someone tells you if a card has a vowel on one side, then it has an even number on the other side. Which of the cards do you need to turn over in order to decide whether the person is lying? Let's test each card. Is it relevant to know which number or letter is on its backside? What about E? Is it relevant? Obviously, it is relevant. If the backside shows an odd number, the person has lied. What about K? Is it relevant to know which number or letter is on its backside? No, the backside of K is irrelevant. What about 4? No, the backside of 4 is irrelevant. And what about 7? The backside of 7 is relevant, of course. If it's a consonant, then the person has lied. The correct answer, therefore, is E and 7. Many individuals fail to respond correctly. It's difficult sometimes, even impossible, to convince them of the truth. The original experiment was published by Wason and Johnson Laird in 1972 in a book called Psychology of Reasoning. Many individuals look for confirmation, not falsification. Psychologists call this the confirmation bias. But after looking year after year at the score sheet with this huge diversity of answers, I understood the 4-card experiment is not about logic. It's about polyrationality. The 4-card experiment alerts planners to communicate with a polyrational world in mind. If people find it difficult to answer E7 in a simple experiment, how will they be able to agree on affordable housing, wetland protection, climate action, COVID-19 lockdowns, or all the other problems we as planners have to deal with all the time. A planner thought, let's have a garage. The land user does something totally different here. Retail space, very important for planners. But who would have thought of this combination of a pet shop and a sex shop? Or I love that Dortmund in 2019, cake creator and undertaker side by side. Or a final example of polyrationality from Johannesburg. This building where the ground floor is occupied by the adult world, the first floor by a Christian church, and the second floor by a martial arts studio. Truth itself is often concealed in such a way that the harder you look for it, the harder it is to find. Isaac Bashevis Singer